Welcome, friends and fellow hobbyists. Thank you so much for joining me for an all-new edition of Diecast Emporium Military Mondays, brought to you by my friends at SmallScaleHobbies.com. It's Memorial Day, the most solemn of our holidays. It's where we honor and remember all of the servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of all the freedoms that we hold dear. So, I figured I would go on location, travel to my local memorial park. Here, specifically in Claremont County, this park is honoring the Vietnam War veterans, and in the background you can see a full-size mock-up of a Huey helicopter, which also happens to be the subject of today's video. So, the Bell UH-1D Huey was initially known as the Iroquois, but because of the UH designation for utility helicopter, people just started calling them Hueys, and as often happens in the military, nicknames tend to stick. It was the first turbine-powered helicopter in service with the U.S. military when it was introduced in 1959. Shortly thereafter, it became the iconic symbol of the Vietnam War. Every TV show, every movie, every book, even your history books, if you know anything about the Vietnam War, you're instantly going to see a photo or some footage of Huey helicopters in combat. Over 16,000 Hueys have been built, and they were developed for the U.S. Army out of a necessity and need for a medical and utility helicopter platform. A little bit more info. There were several different variations used in the war in Vietnam. This version is based on the troop transport version known as SLICs. You'll see a model here in a minute of a gunship version, which were the attack close air support helicopters, which had rockets and machine guns on them. And then also, there was a medevac version, which would carry wounded and dead service members out of hot landing zones, or LZs, and those were known as dust-offs. The U.S. Air Force today is still operating a fleet of Hueys with the UH-1N model. All right, focusing on the model that you've seen in front of you now for 2 minutes, this is the mini tanks, model number 334, Bell UH-1D Huey Iroquois. This was made several decades ago, and the model that I received from Greg and purchased from Greg was actually the all-white United Nations version, so before I did anything I had to paint this, and that's why you see it painted in the green color that you see in front of you. The kit overall is pretty easy to put together. I would say that don't pick this kit if this is your very first military kit you've ever done in your life, but by extension and on the same token, it's not the most difficult either. It just requires a lot of patience. You can get the main rotor blades to spin and also the tail rotor to move as well. All right, as I mentioned and promised you, this is the troop transport version, a very early on version of the Huey in Vietnam. But also, I have a Huey here, which is the gunship version. This one specifically is based off of, if we zoom in a little bit closer on it, is based off an air cavalry one used in the Battle of Ia Drang Valley in 1965. The model, the biggest difference that you'll notice immediately are the addition of the 275 rocket pods on each side, and then the door, of course, would open up, and there would usually be a door gunner wielding an M60 machine gun normally. This one is a die-cast model. I believe the company is Daron, D-A-R-O-N, and it's part of their postage stamp series collection, and it is modeled in exact 1/87 scale. It's one of their few models in the postage stamp collection that are actually HO. So there are two versions of the Huey helicopter. A Vietnam-era workhorse. Certainly we could not have been able to do what we did in Vietnam without the advent of this helicopter. Because of the terrain in Vietnam, it was not easy to insert troops of soldiers. So you would fly them in by air, drop them off, and then you would pick them up when everything was done. And obviously that Vietnam, because of that, became the helicopter war, if you will. Nowadays, helicopters are used in a variety of different ways in the U.S. military, and they have been used in every major conflict since. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the real-life Huey in the background, so don't go anywhere. Alright everyone, thank you for sticking with me. So, as promised, up close and personal, at least this is the closest I can get with getting everything in the frame. Here is the local Huey helicopter, representing a medevac version, as you can see from the cross. We will walk up closer on it. So again, this is on location here in Claremont County at our local Veterans Park. Here is a placard which honors all of the Claremont County Vietnam War veterans and those that made the ultimate sacrifice. Also down here, which is also noteworthy to show, is the POW-MIA, Prisoners of War Missing in Action. It's hard to fathom and comprehend that over 58,000 American lives were lost in Vietnam, but there are also, historians debate on the exact number, but just know that there's a significant amount of folks that are still missing and unaccounted for. And hopefully we can bring them all back home, because they certainly are not and will never be forgotten. Zooming back out a little bit to take closer shots at the Huey. Here we have U.S. Armed Forces. We have the tail number 12972. Here's your tail rotor. And obviously your big main rotor. Walking up a little bit underneath the door. Cargo hook, max load 4,000 pounds. Here we have the pilot's name, Lieutenant, or LT for short. So a lot of times these pilots, when they're flying this thing, specifically in Vietnam, they would be looking through the bottom of the glass. So here you can see an up-close representation of that. Your field of view is somewhat obstructed in any helicopter, but definitely your sight lines were a bit off in Hueys in particular. So a lot of times the pilot, co-pilot, they would be looking through the bottom glass. Here's up close underneath if you want to see what that looks like. Finally, we'll come over here. Claremont County, Ohio, Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 649. And then we can see what this side looks like. I've lived in Cincinnati now for a number of years, and this has been here for as long as I've been here. So I'm not sure exactly when this got put up, but it certainly is a wonderful place to come with your family, pay homage, pay tribute, and each of these bricks as well, you can see here, from veterans. And you can walk the entire place and see the names. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining me on this very special Diecast Emporium Military Mondays edition. It's Memorial Day. As I said in the introduction, it's the most solemn of all holidays, and it's where we honor all of those that never came home. Thank you all again for watching. Until next time, take care, be well. I'll see you in the next review.